I honestly didn't have high expectations for the dinner party, and if I thought I could have gotten away with skipping it, I would have. But I'd have offended my wife, Mara, who had initially objected politely, then used that piercing tone. She swore this time would be different. And I knew better than to ignore the edge in her voice as she cupped my cheek like that. Maybe this dinner would ease the memory of the last catastrophe at her sister's place. I didn't really believe her. But I got dressed anyway. She pulled my hair back, straightened the navy blazer she liked, and I arrived with a respectable bottle of red wine tucked under my arm. As usual, Mara's family lived in a home that looked beautiful, aesthetically curated. But underneath the polished walls and pricey yet uninspired art was the same familiar cold. The walls were the color of icy cream. The air dropped a few degrees the moment we walked in. Socially, Mara nodded a few times, just enough. Nothing warmed her. Her eyes landed on me, then slid away. Her mother kissed my cheek, barely brushing skin. Her brother Warren grunted something like a greeting before disappearing into the kitchen. Jane watched me, fork, mid-air, lips biting down. Didn't say a word. I moved around the room as though I belonged. She curled up like she'd tasted something foul and was trying to place the flavor. I helped set the table, made small talk with Helen about the traffic and weather. Mara smiled at me, as if she appreciated the effort. For a fleeting moment, I thought, maybe this time really will be different. We sat down in the dining room under a low chandelier casting soft golden light. Everything looked warm, felt close. Dinner started in silence. Roast lamb, mashed potatoes with rosemary glaze. Just enough carrots. I commented on the seasoning. Helen smiled, tightly. Jane rolled her eyes. Mara steered the conversation towards safe topics, new promotions, upcoming trips, Helen's latest garden renovation. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. You could feel it. By the time Jane filled her champagne glass for the third time, I could hear it, like a siren humming in my bones. Her hand shook, not from alcohol. She was too composed for that. Then dessert came out, something chocolatey and layered, unappetizing. Just as the forks clattered against porcelain, Jane stood, like a jack-in-the-box. Her chair screeched against the hardwood. She didn't raise her glass, didn't tap it, just pointed her fork at me. "Give back the gold you took from Dad's safety deposit box," she said. Her voice was flat, her hand trembling. Her face pale. "We know it was you." The room froze. She held the fork like a blade. I looked at her, at Mara, at Warren, at Helen. The chandelier dimmed. Jane's hand trembled, fork still raised. My mouth didn't open, but beside me, I heard Mara inhale, sharply. A quiet sound, one I'd only have caught if I were tuned to her like a radio. I didn't respond, didn't deny, didn't beg. Instead, I reached into my inner pocket, pulled out my phone, and placed it gently on the table, unlocked it. Mara said my name, softly. Noah. But I didn't look up. I tapped the video I had queued, turned the screen toward the table, and hit play. A bank lobby came into view, the quiet hum of activity, the chime of a teller calling the next customer. A tall man entered the frame. Charcoal, coat, unsure gait. He glanced around, looked directly at the camera, then stepped up to the counter and held out a key. In the top right corner, the timestamp read, 3 days before the funeral, 3:12 p.m. Jane's face began to shift, confusion spreading like fog, mouth open, as if to speak, to deny, to plead, but nothing came. Her fury turned to bewilderment, then fear. Mara's mouth parted, her brows furrowed. Warren leaned forward, staring, his fork still buried in mashed potatoes. The man in the video moved toward a secured hallway, The screen faded to black. Helen's hand gripped her wine glass a little too tightly. I looked up, met Jane's eyes. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. Without saying a word, I slid the phone across the table, toward Helen. "I got it legitimately," I said, "from the bank's internal camera system. Had a feeling tonight's menu might include more than just lamb." Helen's hands trembled as she played it again. Jane stood motionless, her shoulders sagged, her eyes darted. Mara was still staring at me, really looking at me, like she was replaying the last few weeks in her mind, adjusting every moment against this new truth. After a minute, Warren muttered, "That's Ellis." Jane let out a shaky laugh, one that didn't land. I leaned back in my chair, suddenly aware of how hot the room had become, but the heat wasn't from the chandelier. It was from tension. I took a breath, not to relax, but to keep myself from shouting, and I stayed quiet. Let the house of cards shake, watched it quiver. For the first time that evening, I wasn't the outsider. I was the storm sitting at their table. "Would you ever forgive me?" I didn't want to call it a family gathering, because it sounded like him, sitting there by himself in a room full of his own remorse. This was about reconciliation. Therefore, there would be hugs, forgiveness, and opportunities for second chances, and dessert. But we required witnesses, everyone in one place, and the kind of stillness that only the truth can bring, like a grenade, tossed into the middle of a table. We had it at Helen's house once more, in the same location as the last time. The accusation seemed appropriate, like a trip back to the crime scene. Mara stood next to me, silent, her arms folded like a shield, unable to lower them. Her eyes fixed on mine. We barely made it through the door before she whispered she didn't think Jane would arrive softly, or arrive at all. However, Jane did come, with loud heels, even though the sun had long since set. Her presence drained the warmth from the tile, lips painted too brightly, sunglasses on. She left the room right away, as if she still believed she could steer the conversation in a positive direction, that the truth might be reset by glare. Ellis arrived behind her grudgingly, plainly uneasy. He didn't meet anyone's eyes. His were good, but he didn't deserve to look into ours. Helen stood by the fireplace with her arms folded. Warren was already seated, seeing them together. Helen looked torn, as though unsure whether to send her daughter out or welcome her.